I did not know this. There are two official International Women's Day websites from two completely separate organisations who have two completely different themes, but both happening on the same day, March the 8th. I found this doing a Google search for International Women's Day 2026 up for me in the first line of the search to internationalwomensday.com site. So I clicked on, and the theme for 2026 was, or is, give to gain. I read those three words and immediately, honestly, it felt like the air had come out of my body. I felt exhausted. And then my mind wandered to my mother. My mother is 70 years old. She's still working. She's still giving. And she delivers groceries, newspapers, and medicines to her peers and neighbours who can no longer get around themselves. And I ask her, when will you stop? And we always joke about it because she never gives me a complete answer. And what I don't say, but my mum recognises, is that she has been doing this my whole life and she sees me doing the same. Essentially, I am mirroring my mum, which is not a bad thing. However, seeing these three words, give to gain, it left me exhausted. And seeing the energy of my mum at 70 leaves me exhausted. And it's not because I don't believe in giving and the generosity and the blessing of being able to give, because life is about exchange. It's about flowing in and flowing out. It's about circulation. But the words give to gain did not feel like an invitation. It felt like someone had handed my mother one more thing to carry. It felt like it handed me something else to carry and maybe other women to carry. And so just that feeling alone, I decided this theme was not for me. But I had questions. For example, who created this theme? Who approved it? What was the thinking behind it? And who actually benefits? And if there is money because they do charge for some products or merchandise, then where does it go? And who does it benefit? So I pulled on the loose thread of my curiosity to explore this because I needed to know. Greetings, this is JK and welcome to Like Me Officially podcast, where raw truths meet reflection. This is where I challenge social narratives, explore self-efficacy, and move beyond surviving into thriving. Because if you're anything like me, you'll recognize that life is for living and living freely. Hashtag our time to thrive. So back to the give to gain. I need to know who's really gaining from this and why is this so important for me to understand? I think it's important for me to understand because not only is it March, and during March, especially on March the 8th, there's the acknowledgement of International Women's Day. But also I know that this isn't a day that just popped up. There is history behind this day. And having done my fair share of women's marches in the UK, you know, pounding the streets of London, and done my share of campaigning and written to various MPs and the government, I like to understand the history behind the campaigns that I am choosing to support and get behind. And what I do know about International Women's Day is that it was born from exploitation, silence, and the demand for dignity. The exact same things that this podcast has been created for. And when something born from that gets used to ask women to give more, I have to ask why. Because here is what I've noticed when I read Give to Gain. Yes, I felt exhausted. I didn't feel inspired. Neither did I feel motivated. I wanted to climb back in my bed and pull that duvet right up to my chin and Netflix and chill. But then I got online and I started seeing it come up in articles, in comment sections, in posts, people saying this theme did not land for them, but not always really going deeper as to why it didn't land. And I think that is worth paying attention to, because when something makes you feel off, or when you see something is not landing globally and you can't quite name it, I think it's worth looking into. For me, anyway, my response was not this again. And I wonder if that resonates with anybody else after maybe reading the words Gift to Gain or even hearing what the theme is. Like Me podcast is about healing, and it's about reclaiming one's narrative and about understanding the systems that have shaped the stories that we believe. And Gift to Gain, in my opinion, is part of one of those systems, just dressed up in purple on a day that was never meant for it. So I kept digging, and this is what I found. So International Women's Day did not begin with brunches. It did not begin with purple merchandise, neither a hashtag, and it certainly was not born from the spirit of giving to gain. It began with women and girls, most of them immigrants, demanding more as workers. March the 8th, 1908 in New York City, 15,000 women marched through the Lower East Side, which was also known as the Immigrant Garment District. Jewish, Italian, Ukrainian, Russian, many of them just teenagers working 65 to 75 hours a week, earning around $3 a week. And in today's UK money, that would be about £80, just over £1 an hour. And the UK wage minimum in 2026 is £12.21. These young girls, they worked behind locked doors, not because they were working on some top secret merchandise, but it was to be monitored and to be controlled when they had their breaks and when they went to the toilet, stroke the bathroom, to make sure that they weren't slacking off. And this was common. It wasn't illegal yet. And it was not only inhumane, it was dangerous. 1908. One of the marchers, Sarah Goldberg, said, "I thought I was coming to a golden land, and I struck a factory, a grave." And that comment alone says so much of what these young girls experienced at that time. So fast forward a year later, 1909, November the 22nd, there was a meeting at the Copper Union in New York City, and the hall, as described, was packed out. The male union leaders had been speaking for hours, describing the conditions, decrying the injustice, and urging caution. Don't strike yet. Wait, be patient. We're not sure you have the strength to sustain it. This was what was spoken out to the crowd, full of workers, mostly women, because nothing had changed since the year before. The doors were still locked, the wages were still poverty level, and the men in charge of the labour movement were still telling these women to wait. And then a young lady stood up, Clara Lemlich. She was 23 years old at the time, a Ukrainian immigrant. She had already been on picket lines, already had her ribs broken by hired gangsters, but she'd gone back to work within days, hiding her bruises from her parents so as not to worry them. And she'd listened to the talk for hours, and she stood up frustrated, and she spoke in Yiddish, and she said, "I'm a working girl, one of those who feels and suffers from the things pictured. I move that we go out on a general strike." When she said those words, it was like the people in the crowd, that's all they needed to hear. They roared with excitement, and they promised that they would stand with her and march through the streets of New York. And the next morning they did. And then fast forward a year later, or several months later, 1910, Clara Zetkin proposed an annual International Day for Women's Rights at a conference of over 100 women from 17 countries in Copenhagen, and everybody agreed. Working class women, socialist women, fighting for real change, not personal development, not individual giving, systemic, collective, political change. And the date they agreed was the 8th of March. So that date is not arbitrary. And then fast forward to 1917, March the 8th, Petrograd, Russia. Women took to the streets for the bread and peace protests, for food, survival, and to end World War I. 3 years of war, food shortages, millions dead, and women cold, hungry, exhausted, said enough. The male revolutionary leaders told them to wait. Have you noticed a pattern? All the men saying, wait, hold on, this is not the right moment. And these women said, no, we're not waiting. And they didn't. And their strike brought down the Tsar within days. And Pravda reported, and Pravda was a newspaper, they reported the first day of the revolution was Women's Day. And in 1921, March the 8th, was officially fixed as International Women's Day in honour of what these women did, in honour of what happens when women stop waiting for permission. So in 1909, the women told Clara Limich to wait. 1917, the men told the women of Petrograd in Russia to wait. And in 2026, I'm looking at a theme that says give to gain. The language might have changed, but the instruction feels familiar. Wait, be patient, give more. The women who started this day weren't asking what they could give. They were demanding what had been taken. So I kept digging because what I was seeing didn't line up, and I started to feel that I was starting to really see the truth of International Women's Day. On one side, you have UN Women, which is the United Nations Women's Collective for Women, which was created to advance gender equality and the empowerment of women. Their 2026 theme is rights, justice, and action for all women and girls. Rights for the law to change. Justice, systems must be held accountable. And action, governments must do more. Because women hold only 64% of the legal rights that men hold globally. Not a pay gap, not an opportunity gap, the law. And at current rates, to get any equity, it will take 286 years to fix. That is the lifetime of several generations. And the organisation actually working to change that is chronically underfunded, which probably is the reason why they're hard to find on Google, outranked by internationalwomensday.com. And then there's the version most people like myself actually are seeing first, the one sitting at the top of Google, the one asking people to give to gain. That site is internationalwomensday.com, created by a man called Martin Wright through his company Aurora Ventures, a private consultancy which has 2 offices, one in London and one in Sydney, Australia. Not the United Nations, it's not a charity, it's a business. And their own mission states, we support the supporters, not we support women. We support the supporters. So I did a little bit more digging, and their supporters are their clients, which are organizations. So their client is the organization that wants to be seen supporting women. So that's a very different thing. And this isn't new. In 2025, their theme was Accelerate Action, which sounds strong and aligned. But when I looked for what that meant in practice, what action, measured how, led by who, it wasn't clear. At the same time, UN Women were focused on rights, equality, power, and access, structural change, not just momentum. So it becomes very easy to believe you are contributing to change without actually being connected to it. And that's exactly what The Guardian found in late 2025. They found in their investigations that a major supermarket, a national bank, and a national broadcaster all promoting the theme for International Women's Day 2025, thinking it came from the UN, or maybe they realized it came from the UN but just didn't care. I don't know. And even universities were supporting it. One included the University of Warwick, which published a blog using the theme from internationalwomensday.com in 2025. And I don't know how they found out that they were promoting or working with the wrong platform, but they discreetly removed that blog and any affiliation to The Guardian's investigation also named Aurora corporate partners as the London Eye, MetLife, Ernst & Young, and British Petroleum, a company whose operations have destroyed the livelihoods of women in the global south, which is all interesting, especially as they are on an International Women's Day platform. And the BBC in 2025 cited the Aurora website as if it were an official body. And it was telling its audience what the official colours of International Women's Day was. So the BBC was promoting a private company and presented it as the official record. And that tells me everything I need to know, because I don't think there's anything wrong with organizations being supported. You know, that's what we're allowed to do. But what I'm questioning is why that is being done on the back of a movement that was born out of hunger, exploitation, and the fight for equality and dignity. Those are not the same things. One is asking for justice, the other is asking for participation. One is focused on systems, the other is focused on behavior. One is trying to close a gap, the other doesn't show me the gap it is trying to close at all. So I went back to the theme page to understand what Give to Gain actually is, and I found no statistics, no data, no research cited, no figures about violence or inequality that would indicate to me that they were working to move the dial in the right direction. Just a list of 27 ways to give and a request to strike a pose, cupped hands out front to signify giving and receiving, to post it on social media and use the official hashtag, and to do that all year round. A pose. They want all those participating to strike a pose. And then I looked at the images on the website, because a picture says 1,000 words. There were women and men striking the Give to Gain pose. The women with their hands open, giving, are mostly exclusively Black, Asian, and women of colour. I didn't see white women being or demonstrating the strike the given pose. I'm not saying it's deliberate, I'm just saying what my eyes observed, because the organisations behind this platform, unexplained gender pay gaps, the ones who women of colour are statistically the furthest from the top, are not in these images. They are buying the event pack, putting up the banner, and the faces of giving look like this. Some of the images also look AI generated, which for a campaign about real women and real equality is worth noting. Because like I said, a picture says 1,000 words. What are these pictures saying? These were migrant women working, surviving, sending money home. And I'm looking at today and asking myself, have we moved forward, or have we just changed how it looks? Give to whom? Gain for what? Show me the figures. Tell me the why. Because if I follow this theme, my interpretation is simple. Give more, give your time, give your energy, give your support. And in return, wait. Be patient. Trust the process. Be okay. And that doesn't sit right with me. Because when I look at a number of organizations being amplified, many of them are still falling short when it comes to actually reducing the gaps, not in theory, but in real time. For example, Goldman Sachs in the UK, their gender pay gap is 50.4%. Their official statement to this is, we pay men and women equal pay for equal work. How does that make sense when there's a 50% gap and equal pay for equal work? Both true at the same time. Then there's British Airways, 37% gap in 2023 and 27% gap in 2024. Their explanation, women are underrepresented in pilots and in engineering roles. And both of these organisations, they promoted International Women's Day over the last 2 years. On average, women in the top 5 UK banks earn 67 pence for every pound their male colleagues earn. These are not obscure companies. These are the ones putting up the International Women's Day banners, buying the event packs, and posting purple graphics on LinkedIn, and then filing their pay gap report, hoping nobody reads both in the same week. Editor of Women's Agenda in Australia, Angela Priestley, she has been writing about this since 2022, and she's called these themes weapons of mass distraction. And I think she's actually right. I would respect it more if that was acknowledged, if the message was honest about the shortcomings, about the work still needing to be done, because that is real. That is something I can engage with, because once you know what to look for, you can't unsee it. So purple washing, that is when an organization uses the look and language of equality as cover, while the real gap stays exactly where it is. A 50% gender pay gap and a purple banner. That is purple washing. Gaslighting. That is when a woman at work feels something is wrong. She can see the gap between the banner and the reality, but everywhere she looks, the message says everything is moving in the right direction. So her discomfort becomes her problem, not the organization's. Performative allyship. The appearance of support without any of the substance. Buy the event pack, post a hashtag, file the pay gap report on a different day, and hope nobody reads both. And these are not new organizations. Many of them have been around for 100 years or more, built during the same era that locked those factory doors, built with the same assumptions about who holds power and who serves it. The branding has changed. The assumptions, not as much. And if we are being honest, we also have to ask which women, because if women as a whole are still at a disadvantage inside these institutions, then Black women, Asian women, women carrying multiple layers of disadvantage are starting from an even lower floor. To give gain does not ask these institutions to look at any of that. It's asking women to give more to the same institutions that have been operating this way for generations. And to be clear, there is nothing wrong with other organizations existing around International Women's Day. More voices, more platforms. That's great. That could be good. Real collaboration is fantastic. But this is not collaboration. Real collaboration would mean UN Women, the body created specifically to advance gender equality, impossible to miss. Instead, we have a private company who have built a platform for the organizations that employ thousands of women, who have used the trust that women and individuals have in this movement to make it look legitimate. And they're accountable to no one. That is the gap. And somebody filled it. Not to serve women, to serve the institutions around them. There is a difference. But instead, I'm seeing campaigns centered around giving, with visuals of women standing with their hands open, as if that is the solution, without showing what has actually changed. Whether that is progress or stagnation, effort gets redirected from impact to appearance. And it also makes it easier for a lack of progress to stay hidden behind complicit images, vague language, messages that feel right but don't hold anyone accountable. And personally, I find that insulting, not because I don't believe in giving, but because I'm looking at the gap. I'm looking at history. And I'm asking, why are we still being positioned as the ones who need to give more? Social justice is not passive, it's a choice. And I'm realizing that I've not always treated it like a choice. And so from today, I'm going to make sure that as a consumer, that I am more aware and know why I am following a call to action. Because passive consumption of a cause is not solidarity, it's decoration, and it's welcoming the distraction to be taken off track. We need to be mindful about what we consume, the things we support, the narratives we choose to stand by. And it's okay to change one's mind along the way. I don't think that's weakness, because we evolve, so we're allowed to change opinions. And I think if one chooses to follow any campaign or theme like Give to Gain as part of International Women's Day, I think it's important to always ask who made it and what they're doing over the next 365 days. What's their vision, their plan? Look for the impact, the progress for change. And if there has been no change, see if they've said why there's been no change. I know more now about International Women's Day than I did when I started this episode, and that is enough. It's not everything, but it's enough for now. And I'm standing up for something right now just by asking these questions and seeking to find the answers. I may be totally wrong, and I'm okay with that, but what if I'm not wrong? And what if it's not even about being wrong or right? What if it's about, in a world where everything comes so easy, where we accept things without thinking, that I allow myself to be a critical thinker in my own story by seeking to find the answers to the whys. And Dr. Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And she also said, each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Thank you for listening to this episode of Like Me podcast. If anything I've shared has made you stop, think, or see yourself just a little bit clearer, fantastic. I love this for you. I love this for me. And honestly, I love this for us. And if this episode shifted something in you, give yourself a moment to sit with it. And if anything felt a little bit too heavy, speak to someone you trust. What I've learnt is that we don't heal in isolation, and you don't have to carry any of this alone. This space isn't about staying in survival mode. It's about lifting ourselves out of the dimension that has tried to keep us trapped and choosing a version of ourselves that's still becoming. If this resonates with you, share with someone who might need a reminder or a friend. And make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. I'm JK. Stay open, stay self-curious, and remember, it's our time to thrive.